Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2024 annual Homeless Point in Time Count volunteer training. We do this training every year so that folks have a good understanding of, one, what the training is, what the homeless count is, and what's involved. And so we're excited to have you on board with us today. So our agenda for today is we're going to be covering what is the pit count, who do we count and why, your role in the pit count. We'll be covering the introduction to the surveys, interviews, where to go and who to interview, and of course safety, and then the logistics, what to bring, the schedule of events, and then we'll wrap up with a Q&A at the very end. What is the homeless point in time count? The portion that I'm going to be covering. And before I jump in here, I negated to introduce the three presenters today. First, I would like to introduce Juan Albino. He is a systems analyst for Lee County Human and Veteran Services. He'll be leading a portion of this training, covering a lot of the technical side of the what we're doing. And we have Mr. Matthew Wallace, who is an outreach coordinator with Lee County Human and Veteran Services HOT team, which is Homeless Outreach Team. And so he'll also be presenting today. So, and my name is Michael Overway. I'm the executive director with the Lee County Homeless Coalition. And so, again, we're glad to have you all on board. So, again, my portion is I'm going to be covering what is the pit count, who is counted in the homeless point in time count, why we do it, and hopefully a few other FAQs. So, what is the homeless point in time count? Well, this is a count that is divided into a couple of segments. The first is to count all those who are in sheltered programs, whether they're in emergency shelter, transitional housing, or safe havens. In Lee County, our systems analyst, Mr. Albino, and his team pull together that data from the shelters. They use the homeless management information systems to record a lot of that data. And then present it through the homeless point in time count reports. We do some on-site counting as well. For example, at the rescue mission, we'll have folks there doing that count. And then the other side of it is the unsheltered count. That's what we're going to be really focusing on today in the role of the volunteers in that count. The HUD says, this is a no disclaimer here, but HUD says that every COC around the country should perform an annual homeless point in time count sometime during the last 10 days of January. And they do that for consistency purposes. In other words, they want to make sure that we're gathering data at a like time of year all across the country so that we hopefully are able to capture copious amounts of data and be able to provide on folks who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness. This is not an actual count of everybody who is experiencing homelessness. It is a snapshot. Okay, so again, HUD says that typically homeless point in time counts estimate somewhere in the neighborhood of about 30% of those who are actually experiencing homelessness in that catchment area. Who is counted in the homeless point in time count? It is folks who are experiencing, for our presentation today, literal homelessness. So they may be living in their car, they might be living in a park, abandoned buildings, bus stations, campgrounds, and those that are attending provider agencies such as food pantries, clothing outreaches, etc., that have great services in our community and will be staffing those with volunteers, and a lot of those provider agencies will have volunteers on hand to count as well. So we want to make sure that we're casting a very wide net, right, for those who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness so that we get a good understanding of who they are. Again, why do we do a homeless point in time count? Well, we need to understand who's experiencing homelessness. We need to be able to measure folks by different categories. In other words, we look at race, ethnicity, we look at age groups, we look at households by types, whether they're a single person in a household, families, single parents, seniors. We look at all of those household types, and it helps us to understand trends in experiencing homelessness. For example, in 2019, just prior to the pandemic in Lee County, there were 372 persons counted in that snapshot, right? And of those 372 persons, we can go through and say 161 were females, 211 were males. We had 99 of them that were listed as chronically homeless. We had 64 that were children under the age of 18 that were counted. So we collect a lot of this data so that we understand the trends. In 2023, this past year's count, we had 862 folks that were counted in a one-day snapshot. We know that a portion of them were folks who had experienced homelessness from Hurricane Ian. We still have folks today who are experiencing homelessness from Hurricane Ian, and you may come across some of those in your survey counts. It also helps our community to understand what resources we need and best ways to bring about a quick end to their homelessness. So, for example, we know in a lot of communities that homelessness prevention, which is paying past due rents, will help keep people rehoused. We also have our street outreach teams that are out providing a multitude of services, connectivity to healthcare, mental health care, helping navigate different forms of court interactions, and then of course housing, rapid rehousing. How do we get folks from homelessness back into permanent housing very quickly? And so understanding the who's experiencing homelessness helps us to then be able to understand what we need to do to put resources into play. And then of course, the bottom line to the homeless point in time counts is HUD says. HUD says we have to do these things because they provide us funding to do so. Why does the pit count take place during the last 10 days of January? Covered a little bit of this, but again, it's the same time frame, so we have consistency across the United States. There are 435 continuums of care across the country. In Lee County, we are a single geography continuum of care, so we only cover Lee County, but we have other multi-jurisdictional COCs in the state of Florida. For example, Sarasota Manatee is a singular, and then we have the Heartland Consortium, which covers the 7 interior counties from Orlando South. So we do this so that whether you're a rural COC, a single jurisdiction, or a multi-jurisdiction COC, that we're all counting around the same time frame so we can then report on our data at the same time frame. So and this is one thing, having come down from Michigan 23 years ago, and I'm grateful to be in Florida this time of year, by the way. Up in Michigan, we count folks at the end of January, like everybody else, and it's cold. It's really cold. And it's always struck me that, that HUD had folks doing this, but understanding now that we were able to pick some folks up and get them into shelters or temporary shelters, it totally made sense because we had the survey teams out there engaging with them. So again, that made sense. So the other reason why we count is so some folks at the beginning of the month can help to maybe pay for a hotel if they get, SSI, SSDI, or they have some earned incomes. They can help to secure some temporary sheltering, but usually that runs out by the end of the month, and that gives us a snapshot of who may have been staying in hotels, but now they're not, and they're back out on the streets. With this, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Wallace, and he's going to begin his portion.
Thank you, Michael. So thank you very much for joining us today on this very important endeavor. I'm going to go over the actual surveying out there with the clients and things like that, and they'll get into the logistics part of it with the survey app a little later on. When you're going out and talking with people, you're going to try to elicit information from them so that we can gather that information so we can report it to HUD. You always want to make sure that you just start out a casual conversation, but there's a lot of other tips and tricks that we'll go through a little bit this morning. Remember that you're speaking to a highly vulnerable population and asking some very sensitive questions. Always lead with respect for the person you're speaking with and respect for their dignity. Everyone has the right to refuse any or all of your questions. Ask all questions unless the person has already given the answer to the question over the course of your conversation. Always ask questions as they are written. Do not ask questions in a way that shows you think you already know the answer. An example, how do you identify your gender? Do not ask, you're a male, right? So as you're set up for your locations where you'll go, you'll be going out with other individuals. You're going to lots of times be in very public locations, right? Libraries, big shopping mall areas, and sometimes, at actual outreach sites where people are getting services and getting direct connected to this, and sometimes in camps. But as we said earlier, this is counting people who are literally homeless, right? So people can be living in their cars, they can be staying around that plaza, they can be in a lot of different places. So you want to approach everyone who looks unsheltered, right? You don't want to use your stereotypical understanding of that, but sometimes that may be true if they have some of the indicators that they're outside. They have a lot of belongings with them. They have bedding with them. They have lots of food. They're unable to take care of their hygiene, things like that. So the step-by-step guide to conducting interviews is step one is approach and introduce. Approach the person and introduce yourself. Always ask the person if they have a few minutes to answer some questions. Keep in mind, individuals sleeping outside may be dealing with active addiction, mental health concerns, and significant trauma histories. Do not sneak up on or startle people. Never shine flashlights in people's faces. Maintain eye contact if possible and an open stance with your hands visible. Use a tone that's approachable. Speak slowly, be polite, and don't shout. Hi, my name's Matt. We're out here trying to talk to folks who may not have a safe place to sleep tonight. Do you have a safe place to sleep tonight? Do you know where I might find people around here who don't? So lots of times people have said to me, how do you interact with people? And that's the first thing. You just want to introduce yourself to them. They're people just like you, right? And we're out here collecting valuable information to be able to help provide them more services. So if some people may not want to do the survey, you can simply say to them, that's why we do it. It's, it's for us to be able to have a better understanding of what our community is going through. If they say no, walk away. Right? You can always tell them information because you'll have coordinated entry cards, hopefully. You'll have green books with you and the incentive bus pass to get people to come down to the stand down that last Saturday, the 27th, if I have the date correctly. Step two, explain what you're doing and get consent. Explain why you're there. We kind of went over that before. Let them know they'll receive an all-day bus pass and a resource guide for participating. If anybody asks you questions while you're going through this, right, you want to take the time. They're giving you their time. So make sure you take the time to be able to answer it. And if you don't know the answer to the question, please be honest. Don't send someone who has to walk miles to go to get somewhere or in the weather or things like that. Make sure you give them the green book. If they don't know answer for it, you can tell them to call coordinated entry and try to get that answer connected to them. If they consent to answer your questions, continue with the interview. If they don't, thank them for their time and use the observation form. We'll be conducting a survey, and with your participation, we'll help the community better provide services and resources for people who might not have a safe home to sleep at night. It'll take about 4 or 5 minutes. You don't have to answer any of the questions you don't want to answer, and it's all anonymous, meaning your name won't be used. Are you willing to answer these questions? Right? You can make it, find what works for you. Right? Find the way that you can openly, have that dialogue with people. And if you're genuine about it, they'll be genuine with you as well. Step 3 is conducting the interview using the survey form. Go through each question in the survey form. Remember, people have the right not to answer all your questions. And as they go through the training on the actual physical survey app that we use later on, you'll get a better understanding of that. Add any notes that might be helpful. Example, if a person says they have their own apartment, but they're sitting on a bench outside of a 24-hour grocery store at 2 a.m. with what appear all their belongings. Write down that you think there may be a discrepancy in what they are saying versus where they will sleep at night. Step 4, closing the interview. Thank the person for their time. Refer them to any services or resources that they may not have asked about or may need, and give them the incentive, right? The green book, you can give them to them earlier, but we want to try to use the bus pass as the incentive for people to complete the survey. Recording what you heard and observed, step 5. Walk away from the person interviewed to a safe place. Safety is very important. We're going to talk about this as well in a little bit. But one of the things, too, when you're interviewing people, if they are in a big public space, you can always say to people, would you like to step over here? You can motion to a direction you'd like to go where it might be more private to get a better opportunity to have a discussion with them. But you always want to stay around with your team, in a visible place. Take a few minutes after your conversation to double check that you've completed the whole survey form. Include any notes or details. Make sure everything you have written is readable. Complete 4 official and use section for each survey to include your name and the location where the survey was taken. Mood interview, right? This is always one of those things that it's better to cast a wide net, to be able to speak with people. There have been a few times where I've been out with people and they've gotten upset because I had asked them about it. And all I said was, I was just trying to connect you to services. I wasn't making a judgment about you. We're here doing this. We're doing it all over the county today. Simply say, okay, and walk away, right? So it's not always possible to determine if someone has experienced homelessness based solely on how they look. considering where do you see the person? What is the person doing? What time is it? So most of our capturing for surveys will be during the daytime. So you may see someone scrapping through a dumpster or something like that, and they may be doing it just to make money, but they may be able to tell you more information, or that there are other people around there, or they may go find people they know who live in that area and bring them to where you are so that they can get counted as well. So, like I said, I think it's better to cast a wide net and ask for forgiveness than not say something to someone. Who to interview? Pitfall: making assumptions about who to interview using stereotypes of what homeless look like. Best practice approach: everyone you see, right? If you see someone who's got a Gucci purse and their hair's all done and they're wearing heels, they're most likely not homeless, right? So you can take a pass on that one. But anybody else, again, use a soft, non-confrontational introduction that's easy to reverse course if the person is not experiencing homelessness. Hi, my name is Matt. We're out here trying to talk to folks who may not have a safe place to sleep tonight. Do you have a safe place to sleep tonight? Do you know where I might find some people around here who don't? Your safety. This is of paramount importance, right? People who are experiencing homelessness sometimes can be very sleep deprived. So they may appear intoxicated. They may not be able to follow your conversation. If you tack on they do have an active substance issue, or they are experiencing a mental health issue, that may be difficult for them to be able to do that with you that day. You should always be with at least one other person. You never want to be alone with an individual. Never want to go where your other partners can't see you. Keep an appropriate conversational distance from those you are interviewing. And that's a big part of it too, is that some people may be presenting in different ways that you may have a hard time being with. It's okay to take that step back or do it sideways. You don't want to make big gestures. Oh my gosh, I can't talk to you, or things like that. If you're unable to do that, make sure you get somebody else who's on your team to be able to do that. Maintain awareness of the space around you, where other people are, ways to get out of where your space you're in, and et cetera, and things like that. Keeping your head on a swivel, making sure you're paying attention, communicating with the people that are out with you. This one I really like. I'm going to go out because Robin, my first supervisor's on this call, and I can very vividly remember the first day she saw me down on the ground sitting and talking with someone. And that's a thing that you don't want to do while you're doing this, right? Unless you're pretty well have a relationship with people, or you're able to do this kind of things. You want to make sure you maintain a standing proper stance, right? You can do a 30-degree offset from someone. You never want to be right in front of them. I'm a kind of a big guy, so I always tend to step back a little bit more, and that's one of the things that I use. But for what we're doing today, and thank you again for your volunteering with this, is that it's okay to squat down to speak with someone who's sitting or lying on the ground, but always maintain your balance. And remember, prioritizing your own safety. If you don't feel safe to approach someone or going somewhere, don't go. Trust your gut. That's the most important thing. This is just a snapshot, point in time count for us to be able to do that. We'll be able to encounter people in another time. Do not transport anyone other than volunteers in your personal vehicle, right? I would refrain from letting people ask you for things that you are not comfortable with, giving them money, other things like that, right? You want to keep it professional, and we're here to take this survey. I have information to give to you where you can go and get connected to services and things like that. I appreciate all your time. Look forward to seeing you out there.
Thank you, Matt. I will take over from here. My name is Juan Albino. As Mike mentioned, I am the systems analyst here at Lee County Human and Veteran Services, and I'm going to briefly go over the 2 versions of the point-in-time survey, as well as some bits of information about each. I'll also go over the questions that will be covered in the survey, as well as the instructions for the digital app version of the survey. So as you can see here on this slide, there are 2 versions of the survey form. There's the standard digital version and the hard copy version. So the standard digital version is through an app called Survey 123, and I'll go over that here in a second. The hard copy version is a paper version. So during the point in time count, which will take place Monday through Saturday, the week of the 22nd, any surveys taken outside of the Homeless Service Day or Stand Down event must be taken through the digital version, which is the Survey 123 app. Any surveys taken at the Homeless Service Day / Stand Down event will be with paper only. So please do not take any surveys with the digital app at the Stand Down. And people being surveyed, It's going to cover all people or households who are willing and able to answer your survey questions as Matt went over. So the first survey form is the Survey 123 app. So the ArcGIS Survey 123 app is the digital application used for point-in-time surveys in Lee County. Survey 123 is an app software created by ArcGIS. Jason Crage is our in-house GIS coordinator here at Lee County Human and Veteran Services, and he put together our survey questions into this application for the digital survey to be taken. We'll go over some bits of information pertaining to the app here before we go over the instructions. Survey 123 compiles survey data and captures GIS coordinates of where each survey is taken. The app is available in the App Store for iPhones and the Google Play Store for Android phones. Now, a smartphone or tablet that utilizes cellular data is required. Wi-Fi is not guaranteed at any survey location and should not be relied upon, so please only use smart cellular devices. Wi-Fi tablets, they have the capability to use the Survey 123 app. However, we've run into issues in the past with surveys being taken without the Wi-Fi and the data not getting through. And to avoid any data issues, especially with the information being so important, we ask that you utilize a device, whether it be a smartphone or a tablet, that utilizes cellular data. If reliable signal is lacking, the app will save the surveys collected until internet connection resumes or is restored. So you want to make sure that you're logged into the app before you go out to survey these individuals, just to make sure that you are connected to the ArcGIS server. Once you get into the application, you're going to be able to pull up the survey and take surveys as needed. If you're out in a wooded area or in a secluded area or just in a general area that does not have good cellular connection, the app will still collect the information that you take, and then will push that to the server once connection is restored. So you don't have to worry about losing your cell phone signal or cellular tablet signal. If it goes away, you don't have to worry about it. It will still save that information as long as you're hitting the save button at the end of your survey, and we'll go over that here shortly. So for the point in time, and this is going to apply for any surveys that you take during the point in time count outside of the stand down event. You only need to complete one survey per household. So in order to do that, the best way to do that, you want to make sure that you as the surveyor is aware of what persons make up the household prior to beginning the survey. This is going to help you when you arrive at questions about household members in the latter part of the survey. So the initial part of the survey is going to ask about the quote unquote head of household. So whoever you're surveying about the household, we consider that to be the head of household. They may not consider that to be the head of household, but for the purposes of the survey, we just want to collect the survey on one adult and add on the household members to that one survey. And we'll go over that in the questions here shortly. Please complete the for official use only section at the beginning of the survey with your name and location where the survey was completed. Please use location names if surveying in or next to a specific building. If outdoors and not near a building, please use other markers such as street names to help describe the location. So if you're at the intersection of 41 and Daniels, and you aren't necessarily near Costco, you're not necessarily near Bell Tower, you just want to put 41 and Daniels, or Cleveland Avenue and Daniels. That helps us. But if you're right outside of a building and you know the name of the building, go ahead and put that building. That information helps us for future point in time events. It allows us to plan where we want to send these outreach teams to conduct these surveys. So that information is very important. Paper survey forms will not be used for the point in time count, as I mentioned, only for the Homeless Service Day / stand down event. Surveys are to be completed by survey volunteers only. So if you're using your phone, please do not hand the person that you're surveying your phone to complete the survey. And the same goes at the stand down event. Please do not hand the individuals the paper form for them to fill out. It is your responsibility to conduct the survey and ask the questions. That also helps us to maintain uniformity in how the data is collected. It's only going to make things more efficient and keep the flow of the event going. You're going to see that there's a very long line outside the stand down event. So we want to make sure that we get through those surveys as efficiently as possible. Now at the stand down event, every adult must be surveyed or have a completed survey in hand to enter, even if a survey was completed earlier in the week during your point in time count. So if you approach one of these individuals and they mention, well, I did a survey on Tuesday when I was at the soup kitchen, just let them know, we appreciate you completing that survey. We need to complete it again today in order for you to enter this event. Please, if you don't mind, work with me to complete this survey so that we can get you in. And they'll usually work with you. People outside of the stand down event, they're usually very happy that these services are being provided and that they had the opportunity to partake in them. So again, please continue your positive attitude and your willingness to work with the individuals that you will be surveying. An example of every adult getting surveyed and why it's important: if a husband and wife attend the stand down event, the husband and wife should each have a completed survey in hand in order to enter. There will be questions on the survey asking, is there another person in your household who completed a survey today? So you as the surveyor, again, are responsible for understanding who all is in that household, meaning they live together. If they were to move into a place, they would move in together. Just because they're at the event together, or just because they may be staying in a camp together, that doesn't necessarily mean they're part of the same household. So keep that in mind. It's very important to know and to be able to determine who is actually in the household. It is strongly recommended that one survey volunteer completes all adult surveys for each household. So that's the same as the point in time count. Make sure that you have a proper understanding of who's in the household and complete the surveys for the entire household. Volunteers should begin surveying those at the front of the line at the stand down event and work their way to the end of the line. But please wait for instruction at the stand down before beginning the survey. So when you get to the stand down event, if you get there before the event starts, you're going to see the long line. Please do not proceed to survey until you've been given instruction to. Mike and I will be coordinating that, and we will let you know when it is time to begin surveying so that we can get things going. When both sides of the survey form, so there are two sides of the paper form, have been completed, hand the survey to the client and explain that the form is to be turned in at the gate for admission into the event. I will be at the gate, so I will be the one looking over the survey to make sure it's completed prior to their admission into the stand down. It is important that you as the surveyor do not hold on to the surveys. So it is not your job to collect all the surveys that you're taking. You want to complete the survey front and back and then hand it to the individual that you surveyed. Let them know this is your ticket in the door. Please make sure that it's in good condition for when you hand it to the person at the gate, which will be me. If the individual completes the survey, but they do not have the survey when they get to the gate, they're going to be pulled aside and surveyed again. So again, it's important that you not only hand them the survey, but that you inform them that they will need that for admission. As I mentioned, stand down surveys will be collected and double checked for completion at the entrance by me prior to admission. There will be a limited number of pens and clipboards provided for survey volunteers to use. You as the volunteer are encouraged to bring your own pen and or clipboard if possible, because we're only going to have maybe 8 to 10 survey or clipboards. I mean, we will have quite a few pens, but with so many people at the event, pens come and go. So if you feel more comfortable using your own pen, your own clipboard, it does benefit us because it helps us to ensure that there are enough available for all volunteers. Paper surveys translated into Spanish will be available for bilingual volunteers to assist with surveys. And again, the digital survey version is not to be used at the stand down event. Before I proceed, one thing that I want to add to this: when the event starts, there's going to be a long line of individuals waiting to enter the event. As those individuals get surveyed, there are going to be less and less people to survey. So you as a surveyor may be asked to, if you are willing to, become a guide that guides the individuals around all the tables in the stand down event. It would be very helpful if you are willing to make that adjustment if asked, just because guides are very important to keep that line flowing. The individuals coming into the event are not allowed to just roam around the event on their own. They have to have a guide. So if we run short on guides, it holds people at the gate. So as we start to get through that line with all the surveys being done, if you are willing to become a guide afterwards, please come see me, please come see Mike, and we will let you know if that is okay, or we may come to you and ask you if you'd be willing to be a guide. So we definitely appreciate you volunteering to do either or both. Survey questions. So questions on the digital survey or digital version of the survey 123 and hard copy versions are identical. Certain questions are supplemental and only appear in the digital version when a specific response to a previous question is given. And I'll give you some examples here shortly. Do your best to provide clear and concise answers to open-ended questions. For example, when answering the question of what approximate date a client became homeless, please help the client provide the best estimate of time frame or date rather than enter a long time ago. So if you ask that question and the person you're working with says, oh, a long time ago, please help to determine that date. Was it in the last 12 months? Would you say it's been within the last 2 years, 2 to 3 years? Help them narrow down that time frame so that you can give the best approximate date you can. It's only going to help us with the data. Complete all survey questions to the best of your ability. All you have to do is just ask the questions and they're going to provide answers. If you feel like a little more clarity is needed to be able to select an option on that survey, ask a follow-up question. It'll definitely help you out. And then on the digital version of the app, make sure to save your survey, which is something you do by tapping the checkmark symbol. Make sure you do that prior to moving on to the next person. That way you confirm that the survey is saved and the data is collected. So I'm going to go over questions specifically, and I'm going to do that by sections. The top section, or the first section in the survey, is going to go over demographic information. You're going to be collecting demographic information, including gender, race, marital status, and veteran status, in addition to their name and their date of birth. Usually the individuals that you're surveying are very willing to provide this information, so you don't have to go into it very leery. A lot of times they're going to be as comfortable as you are with them. So if you help them ease into the survey, they're usually going to be willing to work with you, especially knowing that you're there to help them. So again, collect their name, their date of birth, their gender. You're just going to ask them what their gender is, and then based on their response, you select the appropriate gender. Their marital status, their race. Keep in mind that you can select more than one race if a client is multiracial. If they give you a response for race and you're not sure what box that would fall under, you can always select the other option and then write in or type in the race that they responded with. And then when I look through the data later on, I can figure out what box or what race that would fall under. So don't feel like you necessarily have to figure that out if you're not sure. You can always use that other box, but do your best to choose one of the options that are available and don't just always revert to other if possible. And then the final two questions in this section pertain to the client's veteran status. We're asking if the client served in the armed forces. So yes or no. If they say yes, then you can ask this additional question: were you activated into active duty as a member of the National Guard or as a reservist? Yes or no. Now, if they answer no to having served in the armed forces, you don't have to worry about that activated into active duty question. The same goes for the digital version. Okay, the next section pertains to their homeless status. So this is the meat and potatoes of the survey. We're asking them if they have a regular place to stay right now. If they say yes or no, go ahead and mark that. And then we're asking, where did you stay last night? So the options here are non-housing. So non-housing consists of any place that's not meant for human habitation, whether it be a street, a park, a car, an abandoned house. Basically, if they do not have a roof over their head and running water, heat, it is not a place meant for human habitation. So that would be considered non-housing. The next option is emergency shelter, including hotel. So with emergency shelter, this is very important. If they say that they're staying in an emergency shelter, please ask them which emergency shelter they're staying at. Because a lot of times we'll get clients that say they're staying at an emergency shelter and they are really staying in a tent. That is their emergency shelter. Or they're staying in an abandoned house. That's their emergency shelter. Or they're staying with a friend. An emergency shelter should be an actual shelter facility. A couple of examples of the ones that we have here locally are the Salvation Army and the Bob James Empowerment Center, the Lee County Rescue Mission, the Oasis Shelter for Youth. Those are all emergency shelters. So that's the reason why we're asking what emergency shelter they are staying in. You want to make sure that you put that down, because then we can go back in and look at that emergency shelter data to see if they were in fact in that emergency shelter on that day. Transitional housing, permanent housing, same thing. Please ask them which one they're staying at. That helps us confirm that they are staying in one of those facilities. If the client says, I'm staying at my home, ask them if they own their home, ask them if they rent their home. If they own their home or rent their home, are they receiving a subsidy to help pay for their mortgage payment or their rent payment? Asking those additional questions, especially in this section, will help you determine what selection to choose. And then, of course, if they give you a response and you don't know which one to select, you can select the other category and specify in the field what that other option is. If they're staying with friends or family, you will want to ask if they're staying on a temporary or permanent basis. If they're staying on the streets or an emergency shelter, you want to ask what approximate date they began living there. Again, help them with determining what the best date is for that. There's going to be a checkbox for if the client has been homeless for 1 year or longer. And that is going to be based on the staying on the streets or emergency shelter question, basically what that approximate date is. That approximate date was more than a year ago, then you can check that box. Another thing to keep in mind is that the definition of homelessness will only include non-housing and emergency shelter. So anything outside of that, they do not meet the definition of HUD homeless. There are some state homelessness definitions that they may fall under, but we're focusing on HUD homeless. So that's going to, again, include if they're staying in a non-housing situation or at an emergency shelter. If a client is staying in a hotel and they're paying for it themselves, please check other and enter hotel. Please do not select that emergency shelter option. That emergency shelter option, including hotel, is there for if they're staying in an emergency shelter or if the hotel is being paid for by a third party, such as a nonprofit or a government entity. So again, that's very important. If they're paying for their own hotel, that is an other situation. That is not an emergency shelter situation. If you're completing the survey for an adult household member who is not the head of the household, this location information should match that of the survey taken of the head of household. So especially at the stand down event, if you have a husband and a wife, they're living together and they're staying at a hotel and it's being paid for by a nonprofit, they should each have the emergency shelter option selected on their surveys. And that's another reason why it's important that one surveyor collect the surveys for everyone in the household so that the data is consistent. Moving on to the next section. These questions have more to do with chronic homelessness and if the client meets the definition of chronic homelessness. So these questions including today, how many times have you experienced homelessness in the last 3 years? Help them to determine that. A break in a homelessness is any break in homelessness had to have lasted 7 days or longer. So if a client was homeless, then they moved in with their family for 2 weeks, and then became homeless again. They went back on the streets. Those are 2 instances of homelessness. That's how you want to approach this question. What is the total number of months you experienced homelessness in the past 3 years? If client says, I've been homeless for 2 years, on and off, that's 24 months. If a client has been homeless, they say I was homeless for 6 months and then I went into shelter, or I went into shelter and then went back out, there was no break. So they were homeless that whole time. But we want to know the total number of months that they were homeless. Does the client have any of the following conditions? Do they have a physical disability, developmental disability, mental health, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, HIV, AIDS? And you can select more than one, and just go based off of what the client reports. And then what caused you to become homeless? There are a couple of different options there to choose. When you ask the client the question, just choose the option that you believe best suits their situation. And again, you can choose more than one. Please try to avoid checking client doesn't know when asking for the number of times experiencing homelessness in the past 3 years. If the answer is not never, then please ask the questions that can help the client best determine the answer. For what caused you to become homeless, please use the answer that best fits the circumstance, as I mentioned. Use an other option if their situation is not on there, or if they're not homeless. Make sure you check not homeless, or you can write, if it's a paper survey, you can write in not homeless. Household member section. This section exists to determine if there are others in the household under the same living situation. For example, if an individual is currently staying with family and were to move out, the number of household members that would move out with that person should be reflected in these questions and in the number here. So they're asking, do you have any family members living with you now? Yes or no. Again, this is just for the people in their household. Please do not count any people that they are living with. If they move in with their parents, do not count the parents. If the parents own the home and the client would move out on their own if they were to leave, do not count any additional members outside of that person's household. And it is also important that individuals are only counted once. For this reason, we ask that the surveyor only completes one survey for the head of household and make sure all household members are accounted for in this section. The second question here says, if yes, if they have any family members living with them, please provide the number of family members, including the person that you're interviewing, other adults and children in the household. So if the person you're interviewing says that they have 2 additional people, you want to add all 3 together and put 3 on the survey. In the Survey 123 app, you will be asked the total number of children, and children is anyone in the household under 18, and adults who are anyone 18 and over that are in the household. So how many children are in the household under 18? Please enter the total number of children. Do not count children in the household who are 18 and over. So if there's a 19-year-old person in the household living with their parents, although they are a quote unquote child of the parent, they should not be counted as a child for the purposes of this survey. Please include them in the adults section. How many adults are in the household? Please enter the total number of adults, including the head of household who is being surveyed. So make sure you put the client that you're interviewing in that section as well. You're going to enter M for male and F for female, followed by the age of each person as seen in the example that you see on the screen. For all adults, you're going to include a Y at the end if the adult is a veteran of the armed forces, and an N if the adult is a non-veteran. For children, you would just put their gender, so M, F, either one, and then their age. So in this example, we have a male who's 16 years old, a female who is 8, and a male who is 4. So we do not need to include any veteran status information here. You just put the gender and the age. For the adult section, you're going to put the gender, the age, and the veteran status. So in this situation, we had a female who's 48 years old and a non-veteran. We had a male who's 36 years old who is a veteran, and a 24-year-old male who is a non-veteran. On the paper copy of the survey, this is how it will look. Again, there will be the same between the digital version and the paper version. If there are any additional members who have completed a survey, please make sure that you fill out that section that asks, have these household members already filled out a survey today, or will they? Yes or no? And then put in that person's name and date of birth, and that will help us to match those surveys up later when we are compiling the data. Now I will briefly go over the app instructions for Survey 123. Point in time survey instructions for the application. Again, the digital app that we're using is ArcGIS Survey 123. You can download that from the App Store or the Google Play Store, whether you have an iPhone or an Android phone. So these steps will help you download and load the 2024 PIT survey into the app. These steps and these instructions were made with an Apple device. So Android steps may vary, but they're going to be very, very similar. If you've done the survey in years past, you do not need to go through these instructions again. All you have to do is open the survey, assuming that you still have the survey in your device. And once you pull up the app, you want to go to the, I'm going to skip down really quick and then come back up. You want to go to where it says continue without sign in. And then you'll see the survey option at the top of your screen. When you select last year's survey, it's going to ask if you want to update, and it'll update everything to the 2024 survey. So again, if you previously did the survey through the 123 app and you still have the app, all you're going to have to do is update it. You will not need to re-download. If you deleted it since last year, go ahead and go through these instructions again. So first, you're going to want to download the app from the device store, whether you have an Apple or Android device. Once you open the app, you may get a prompt here asking if the app can access your camera. You want to make sure that you allow it to. If it pulls up on an Android device, same thing. You want to make sure that you allow the camera to function. It's going to be very important. Once you've done that, you can go to where it says continue without sign in. You do not need to sign into the app. Just continue without signing in. At this point, and possibly before this on the Android devices, it's going to ask if the app has permission to access your location. You want to make sure you allow. So again, make sure you allow camera, make sure you allow location. At this point, you should be at the main page. You can click the QR reader at the right side of the search bar. And if you do that, you can scan the QR code that is listed in these instructions, or you can go to the link arcg.is/0ppll9 in your browser, and that will load up the survey into the app once you have the app downloaded. For anyone who would like these instructions, I'll provide a link at the end of the session. After tapping the notification, you may get a pop-up question that says open this page in Survey 123. Go ahead and tap the open option there. At this point, the survey should be loaded and ready to use. So again, the survey is going to have the same questions as the paper version. Questions with a red asterisk are required to be answered before finishing and sending the survey to the database. So make sure you complete those. If it's not allowing you to send the survey or finish the survey, it is probably because you did not complete an option. Please make sure that all fields are completed before ending your time with the person that you're surveying. Please do not leave and then save. Please save before you leave to make sure that you have all the information you need and you don't have to track that individual back down. To complete the survey, all you have to do is click the check mark or tap the check mark in the bottom right corner of your screen. And then you'll get a message saying that the survey is completed. Go ahead and send now. So you want to tap the send now icon. If you're not connected to internet, if you lose your signal, you may not get the send now option, but when you do connect again, you will get the opportunity to save your survey. So make sure that you're doing that. When you're done with one survey and you want to collect an additional one, go back to your point in time option in the list of your surveys, which is your main screen. Once you select the option, you want to go down to where it says collect and tap on there, and then proceed with the next survey. And then you'll just keep doing that until you are done collecting surveys. So the last section I'll go over has to do with do's and don'ts with the point in time count. So for the do's, you want to make sure that you get consent before asking point in time count survey questions. Remember that you may be entering into someone's personal or private space. So go in with reverence, with respect, be kind, be courteous, be mindful of their space and their belongings. Do have a conversation with the person that you interviewed. So please don't make it rigid. Please don't make it, hey, I'm going to ask you questions and just bash through the questions. Make it personable, make it easy, help make the person that you're having the interview with comfortable, and you'll see that the surveys are pretty easy to take. And then also make sure you respect the person's time. You want to make sure you're efficient with the questions that you ask. Things that you don't want to do. You do not want to take personal photos of or with the people that you survey. This is not selfie time. So this is not a time to show Facebook what it is that you're doing. Please keep it professional and be mindful of the folks that you are encountering. Do not ask questions in a way that assumes you know the answer. Do not insert yourself into the person's story. Do not force people to answer questions they don't want to answer. So if a person's being resistant, you don't have to push. The information is important, but it's not more important than your safety. And again, you want to make sure you're being respectful. And then do not make promises that you cannot deliver. So this isn't a time to say, I'm going to make sure you get into housing or things of that nature. If you are aware of the options that the client has in the county, and you're familiar with like coordinated entry, if the client is homeless, please refer them to coordinated entry. Have them call the coordinated entry line. It's definitely not a bad thing, but you do not want to get yourself in hot water by making promises that you won't be able to deliver or anything of the nature. All right, that covers my section. I'm going to pass it back to Mike to cover the logistics.
All right. Well, thank you, Juan, and thank you, Matthew, for walking us through the PIT training today. Just a couple of quick items, and then we'll get you on with the rest of your day. Hopefully, it's not waterlogged. This rain gets out of here. So logistics. We're going to cover the schedule, what to bring, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So the schedule for the event is the surveying in the field starts Monday, January 22nd. And goes through Friday, January 26th. Again, these are the days where we'll be using the digital app. We need to make sure that we're recording all the information that Juan's requested. If you are available as a volunteer one of these days and have not been yet assigned to a particular location, we're calling those base camps, by the way. Please reach out to Sherry Arnold in our office at the Lee County Homeless Coalition at 322-6600, 239-322-6600, and she can help get you connected to one of the base camp locations. For Saturday, January 27th, that will be the Homeless Service Day and Stand Down event. That will be held at the City of Palms Ballpark. We will begin vendor setup on Friday the 26th at noon. That will go for a couple of hours. We'll be providing all of the tables and chairs. The vendors, the folks who are setting up, just need to bring what supplies they want to be handing out. If you are interested in becoming a vendor, I need you to contact Deb Wallace, who happens to be on this call, in our office. Again, you can dial the same number or email her at data@leehomeless.org. and get signed up as a vendor. We do currently have 44 vendors for the event, so we're getting pretty close to capacity. And then on the 27th, we'll ask the vendors to gather there sometime between 7:30 and 7:45 in the morning to make sure they've got all their stuff ready to go. And the volunteers will be coming at the same time frame. We'll have a brief opening ceremony and then get the event going at about 8:45, where we can begin surveying folks outside of the gate. Again, as Juan had indicated, they don't come through the gate unless they have a survey in hand. They'll be paired up with a guide once they come in through the door and escorted around the entire process. They will also be given a food ticket. Salvation Army will have their food truck there, and so they will receive a food ticket to go and get some food that day as well. Teams out on the streets for the counts are going to consist of at least 2. Don't ever please go out by yourself. Wait for another team member to be there with you. Hopefully most of our teams will be somewhere around the 4 to 5 number. We'll have a team leader assigned for that base camp so that folks know who they need to be contacting or who they need to be reporting to when they arrive on that base camp. And then we will have law enforcement available, but they'll only be in designated zones, zones where we feel that they need to be. Volunteers should meet at the base camp sites 5 to 10 minutes prior to their shift starting and get connected to their base camp leader. We are asking folks to please stay in your area, stay in your base camp area. Don't wander out too far. And then if the team leader or Leo or other volunteers have not met at the base camp within 10 minutes, please reach out and contact Sherry Arnold in our office, again at 239-322-6600, and you'll remain at that base camp zone for your entire shift. Next slide, please.
Actually, that is the last slide.
Oh, I thought that there was a listing.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. I'm sorry.
So again, team members can exchange cell phone numbers with others at your team in case you get lost or split into pairs, but please, again, stay together. If you have any questions regarding the homeless point in time count surveys, please contact Juan Albino. His contact information is here. If you need any assistance with the survey 123, please contact Jason. His contact information is there. And then the Lee County Homeless Coalition is acting as the volunteer for the homeless point in time count coordination. So you can reach out to us, either myself or Sherry Arnold in the office, and we will be able to assist you. So before we wrap up today's call, are there any questions that we can answer for folks right now?